When the sunlight fell on his forehead, it was painful to look at his face. The golden mask that covered it shone so brightly. Every day, he hid from the world beneath this precious veil. The mask, crafted by a master jeweler, concealed his entire visage from forehead to chin, with only two round openings allowing a glimpse of his eyes, black eyes, like two bottomless wells. He was the king of Jerusalem during a time when knights spent more time at the Holy Sepulchre than in their ancestral lands. In the 12th century, Jerusalem was the center of the world, far more influential than Rome, Paris, or London. Baldwin was born in the year 1061, the son of King Amalric I and Agnes of Courtenay, Countess of Edessa. However, his parents' political marriage soon fell apart at the insistence of the High Council of Jerusalem. The king was forced to divorce his wife, who had borne him 3 children, as the priests discovered a familial connection between them. In annulling the union, Amalric insisted on one condition: that his children with Agnes still be considered heirs to the throne. The High Council had no objections to this. With his mother stripped of her title and influence, and soon remarried, for the 3rd time, no less, her children, including Baldwin, were raised without her. The new stepmother, Maria, a Byzantine princess whom the king of Jerusalem hastily married, was only 7 years older than her stepson and had no real influence over him. When Amalric passed away, Maria left, and the 13-year-old Baldwin ascended to the throne. Even then, Baldwin's tutor, the historian William of Tyre, began to notice troubling signs regarding the young prince's health. The boy seemed to feel almost no pain when his peers pinched or shoved him during play. However, the doctors summoned to the palace could only shrug their shoulders. Perhaps this was just Baldwin's natural disposition? Was he destined to be a fearless commander, oblivious to defeat? But first, Baldwin needed to grow up and solidify his power, as a teenage boy could not govern the kingdom due to his age. Various regents vied for control, including the Seneschal de Planzy and his uncle, the Count of Tripoli. While the noble lords debated who was more worthy, Baldwin could only enjoy the more pleasant aspects of his role, delighting in beautiful music, reading, and taking walks. In the year 1076, the worst fears of the young king's tutor were confirmed. The doctors diagnosed him with leprosy. The young ruler of Jerusalem was doomed, and he needed to start preparing a successor. Yet Baldwin was not one to give up easily. He devised a campaign against Egypt and even paid an enormous ransom to secure the release of the knight Renaud de Chatillon, a notorious adventurer of the time, from Arab captivity. Baldwin believed this man would help him plan his campaign against Saladin. The question of succession weighed heavily on everyone's mind. The most sensible choice was to pass the throne to Baldwin's sister, the most beautiful of princesses, Sybil. However, it was clear to all that the young woman needed support, so the heir to Jerusalem was married off to Guy of Lusignan. Unfortunately, the marriage was short-lived, as the Frenchman died of malaria. Yet Sybil found herself pregnant, and 5 months after her husband's funeral, she gave birth to a healthy son, named Baldwin after his uncle. King Baldwin's military plans began to take shape. He called upon the Templars and the Byzantines for assistance, but fortune seemed to favor him one moment and abandon him the next. On the 25th of November in the year 1077, Baldwin achieved victory at Montgessard, only to lose 1,000 knights 2 years later in the battle near the fortress of Jacob's Ford. The king's illness was progressing. To prevent anyone from seeing how much it affected his appearance, Baldwin meticulously concealed even the slightest patches of skin. He always wore gloves, wrapped his neck in thin silk scarves, and kept his face covered. At every ceremony he attended, Baldwin resembled a living statue, almost a deity in all his splendor, rather than a mere mortal. His sister, with the infant in her arms, would surely become a pawn in the game of powerful lords after his death, so Baldwin devised a plan to marry Sybil off again. He considered candidates from all corners of the world before settling on Guy de Lusignan. This nobleman came from a very distinguished and powerful family, which made the union possible. Moreover, Guy was granted the title of regent. The king of Jerusalem could hardly see and struggled to move. Yet he remained deeply involved in state affairs. It didn't take long for him to realize how mistaken he had been about his new son-in-law. Guy de Lusignan, unfortunately, lacked both insight and courage. They decided to dissolve the marriage with Sybil and crown her young son before it was too late. In the year 1083, Baldwin, the nephew of the king of Jerusalem, was proclaimed Baldwin V. His young mother, Sybil, and his uncle, the Count of Tripoli, were to serve as his guardians. 2 years later, Baldwin IV, the king without a face, passed away. The ruler of Jerusalem was only 24 years old. The king's heir reigned for even less time, about a year, before, after much deliberation, Sybil ascended to the throne of Jerusalem. She ruled alongside Guy de Lusignan, with whom she never divorced. But that is a different story altogether. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, give a like, and thank you for your comments.